Hey guys, Sean here again. So I just wanted to do a little summary on what the last couple of videos have sort of showcased. So realistically, with the barracks first openings, it's sort of the most conventional opening because it lets you get out fighting units as early as you possibly can. You've got your spearmen or your Sparbara if you're Persia, and you're able to make little plays around the map, force your opponent off their hunts and their wood line, try and deny them from being able to gather from anything outside their town centre range. So that's the beauty of that play. It sort of kicks in the earliest. Most likely really be able to snipe your opponent's second town centre with it as well. If you're really diligent, they're trying to greed that out. The thing is, it is sort of counterable as well with things like your early range first, a slightly later barracks with really good spear micro, a mirror build, things like that. Next sort of thing is the range first, so that's obviously a bit more civ specific. So civilizations like Greeks, Persia and Babylon are ideal for using it against Celt or against people that you're really confident they are going to spear rush you but potentially have it delayed by any means. Is also sort of ideal, particularly if you're not Persia, just because you're not going to have the buffer of being able to take aid tent. With Greeks and Babylon, obviously it's a little bit more risky. You've got to do a bit more in terms of worker micro a little bit earlier, try and get them out of there. But yeah, sort of the idea is that you're going to get your first bowman out as his spearmen start applying some heavy pressure to your villagers, and so you sort of trade that gathering time to kill his spearmen, start gathering again. You've already got your archery range up, so you can transition onto either stables or barracks, and he's sort of got to keep scouting you to figure out which of those you're going to do. If you go stables, you've sort of really got the advantage with your raiding as a follow-up, particularly into Celt, because obviously they don't have stables units of their own. They have to rely on their spearmen. And the last thing obviously was the stables first, which I showed you guys earlier with Egypt. Obviously with that one, you're sort of reliant on bigger maps, having the time to be able to get all that up, because you've got to get an extra 50 wood. Don't forget to get the stables out. And so that's sort of going to set it up a bit later, so you're going to want to be further in towards your second town centre. You're probably going to want to opt to squeeze in more economic techs in behind it as well, because the stables units are more expensive, and because they kick in later, you're going to want to follow up with, get to the stage where you're on 3 production facilities, not that much further down the track. Whereas with barracks and range first, you can sort of dally for a minute with exchanging with your opponent before you look at adding in production facilities as well. But yeah, the beauty of that is, particularly on the bigger maps, if you do get to the point where you've got 3 or 4 cavalry, you can get a really quick raid off on your opponent, and there's not much he can do to try and respond to it, either doing the same or basically doing a defensive style of the same thing. The last thing that I'm really going to cover will be to do with more greedy play, as well as more unconventional but map specific and conventional that map play that I think you guys might like, and just some things as well. I think I've already briefly touched on a lot of these things. There are matchup or map specific things about them. Range first is just straight up really bad idea into the civilizations that have an access to both anti-ranged and cavalry in Age 2. Spearmen, it's spearmen first pressure is sort of good into everyone if you Celt. With the other civs, it's really hit or miss depending on sort of what they can follow up with and how the two exchange. And a lot of the time, the civ with the slightly quicker spears or the slightly higher damage ones are going to opt for really hit and run type play, while the spearmen that are more tanky, like say Norse and Babylonian spearmen, they're really good at straight up fights, pushing your opponent out. If he tries to engage on top of your workers as well as your spears, he tries to take that fight, he's just going to straight up lose, just because you've got that much health between all those units. And the thing is as well to keep in mind with the maps, obviously the larger rush distance maps really tend to favour stables units. Medium-sized rush distance maps tend to really be sort of more range favouring and the smaller ones more spear favouring. It's just sort of, I guess, the way it really works. There are sort of some, you know, exceptions with the maps, with things in the middle of the map that tends to really widen the rush distance even though it's a smaller map. So keep that in mind as well. And yeah, guys, don't forget to keep spending. Try not to bank any resource by any more than about 200 than you need to early. Otherwise, it's not something that you can just dump into a couple of units as you get, say, your second town centre or your stables or something like that. You know, you don't really ever want to be banking more than about 200 of a given resource that you're not actively spending. And particularly stone, you really want to try and get to the point where you can cut your stone gathering as close to 300 as possible, but over 300. And then look at resuming it later on down the track, just for efficiency purposes. But yeah, guys, that's just a bit of a general guide and run through with how you want to approach openings in AOEO. I'm sure there's much bigger experts on it than me, but yeah, that'll be the basics that'll probably get you by. Cheers for watching, guys.